My name is Eugene, and I am 67 years old. I want to tell you about the morning that changed everything. I was sitting at the breakfast table in the house I built with my own hands 40 years ago. My fingers trembled as I reached for the milk pitcher, and it slipped. That is when my daughter-in-law looked at me and said, "You are no different from a cripple." My son Derek sat right there. He said nothing. Not one single word. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe if you believe that families should protect each other. Now let me take you back to where it all began, because trust me, by the end of this story, you will understand why I say that silence can be the loudest betrayal of all. I grew up in a small house on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We did not have much, but we had each other. My father worked at the steel mill, putting in 12-hour shifts 6 days a week, just to keep food on our table. He had hands like leather rough and cracked from years of hard labor. I remember watching him come home every evening exhausted, but never complaining. He would ruffle my hair and ask me about school even though his eyes could barely stay open. When I was 14 years old, everything changed. There was an accident at the mill. A chain snapped, and my father was caught underneath falling equipment. He died 3 days later in the hospital, holding my mother's hand. I still remember the sound she made when the doctors told us he was gone. It was not a scream. It was worse. It was silence. After that, I had no choice but to grow up fast. I dropped out of school and started working as an apprentice to a carpenter named Mr. Henderson. He was a quiet man with steady hands and an eye for detail. He taught me everything about wood, how to read the grain, how to measure twice and cut once, how to turn a simple plank into something beautiful and useful. I worked for him for 8 years, while also taking odd jobs to help support my mother and my 2 younger sisters. By the time I was 22, I had saved enough to open my own small woodworking shop. It was nothing fancy, just a garage with some second-hand tools, but it was mine. I named it Eugene's Custom Woodcraft, and I put everything I had into building that business. I worked 16-hour days, sometimes 18. My hands bled from the work, but I never stopped. I could not stop. I had people depending on me. 3 years later, I met Margaret. She was a school teacher at the local elementary school, and she had come into my shop looking for a bookshelf for her classroom. She had soft brown eyes and a smile that could light up a room. I was so nervous talking to her that I quoted her half my usual price just to keep her there longer. She laughed and said she would pay full price if I promised to deliver it myself. I delivered that bookshelf on a Saturday morning. I also brought flowers. We talked for 3 hours that day, and by the end of it, I knew I was going to marry her. It took me another 6 months to work up the courage to propose. I made her engagement ring box myself, carved from oak with a rose pattern on the lid. When she said yes, I felt like the richest man in the world. We got married when I was 25. Our wedding was simple, held in her parents' backyard, with maybe 40 guests. Margaret wore her mother's dress, and I wore a suit I had borrowed from Mr. Henderson. We could not afford a honeymoon, so we spent our first night as husband and wife in our tiny apartment, eating leftover wedding cake and dreaming about the future. 5 years later, Derek was born. I will never forget the moment the nurse placed him in my arms. He was so small, so fragile with these tiny fingers that wrapped around my thumb like he was holding on for dear life. I looked at Margaret, and I made her a silent promise. I would give this boy everything. I would work until my bones ached. I would sacrifice anything and everything to make sure he had opportunities I never had. And that is exactly what I did. I expanded the shop, hired 2 employees, and took on bigger contracts. I built custom furniture for restaurants, hotels, and wealthy families throughout the region. The money was better, but the hours were brutal. There were years when I barely saw Derek awake because I left before dawn and came home after his bedtime. Margaret was my partner in everything. She handled the books, managed the household, and raised Derek with more love and patience than I could have ever mustered. She never complained about the long hours or the missed dinners. She understood that I was building something for our family. On the rare nights when I made it home early, she would have dinner waiting and a cold beer on the table. We would sit together after Derek was asleep, talking about nothing and everything. When Derek was 10 years old, I started taking him to the shop on weekends. I wanted him to understand the value of hard work, to feel the satisfaction of creating something with his own hands. I taught him how to use a saw safely, how to sand wood until it was smooth as glass, how to apply varnish in long, even strokes. He was not a natural, but he tried hard, and that was all that mattered to me. By the time Derek was in high school, he had decided he wanted to be a lawyer. I will not lie, it stung a little that he did not want to take over the business I had built. But Margaret helped me see it differently. Our son had dreams bigger than a woodworking shop, and that was because of what we had given him. The stability, the education, the belief that he could be anything he wanted to be. Law school was expensive, far more expensive than I had anticipated. Derek got into a good program in Philadelphia, but the tuition alone was more than I made in 2 years. Margaret and I sat down and looked at our finances. We could make it work, but it would mean sacrifices. No new truck for me, even though mine was falling apart. No vacation, which we had been planning for years. We even dropped down to a cheaper health insurance plan to save money. I remember the day Derek graduated from law school. Margaret and I drove 4 hours to Philadelphia for the ceremony. We sat in the audience surrounded by families in designer clothes, feeling out of place in our Sunday best. But when Derek walked across that stage, when they called his name and handed him that diploma, I cried. I am not ashamed to admit it. I cried because my son had done it. He had become something more than I ever was, and I had helped make that possible. After graduation, Derek joined a prestigious law firm in Philadelphia. He was making more money in a month than I made in a year. Margaret and I were so proud. We talked about how our sacrifices had been worth it, how Derek would never have to worry about money the way we did. We thought the hard part was over. We had no idea what was coming. Derek met Linda at some corporate event hosted by her father's real estate company. She came from old money, the kind of wealth that makes people forget where they came from. Her family owned properties all over the East Coast, and she had grown up in a world of country clubs, private schools, and summer homes. She was beautiful, I will give her that. Tall blonde, always dressed like she was about to walk into a magazine photo shoot. The first time Derek brought her home to meet us, I could tell something was off. She looked at our house like it was a museum exhibit, something quaint and amusing, but certainly not somewhere she would ever live. When I offered to show her my workshop, she glanced at my hands, saw the calluses and the scars, and politely declined. I would hate to get sawdust on this dress, she said with a little laugh. Margaret squeezed my hand under the table. We did not say anything. The wedding was held at her family's estate in the Hamptons. There were 300 guests, none of whom I knew. The flowers alone cost more than our entire wedding had. Margaret and I sat at a table in the corner, surrounded by strangers in tuxedos and evening gowns, who did not bother to make conversation with us. At one point, I overheard Linda's mother ask someone, "Which one is the groom's father, the one who works with his hands?" I wanted to leave, but Margaret held my arm and reminded me that this was Derek's day. So I stayed. I smiled for the photos. I gave a toast that no one really listened to. And when it was over, I hugged my son and told him I was proud of him. Because I was. I just hoped that this woman would make him happy. For the next few years, we saw Derek less and less. He was busy with work, he said. Linda had social obligations that required his presence. Holidays became brief phone calls instead of family dinners. When Margaret got sick, Derek came to visit exactly twice. Linda did not come at all. The cancer took Margaret quickly, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. I spent every day by her side in that hospital room, holding her hand, reading to her, telling her stories about our life together. Derek came for the last week. He sat with us, cried with us, and held his mother's hand when she took her final breath. After the funeral, Derek pulled me aside. "Dad," he said, "you should not be alone. Move in with us. We have plenty of room." I looked at my son, at the grief in his eyes, and I believed him. I believed he wanted me there. I sold the shop. I sold the house that Margaret and I had lived in for 40 years. I packed up my life into boxes and moved to Philadelphia to live with my son and his family. The house was enormous. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a 3-car garage. More space than any family could ever need. But when I arrived, I was shown to a room on the ground floor near the laundry room and the storage area. Linda explained that it would be easier for me since I had trouble with stairs. The room smelled damp, like it had not been opened in months. Because it had not. It was a converted storage space barely big enough for a bed and a dresser. I told myself it was temporary. They would fix up a proper room for me soon. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. The room stayed the same. And slowly I began to realize that this was not an oversight. This was a choice. Meals were the hardest part. Linda had a rule that the family ate together in the dining room, but whenever they had guests, which was often, I was asked to eat in the kitchen to give them more space. When I sat with the family, Linda and Derek would often speak in French, a language I did not understand. I would sit there pushing food around my plate, feeling invisible. 1 month after I moved in, I had my accident. I was trying to go upstairs to retrieve a photo of Margaret from one of the boxes I had stored in the attic. The stairs were polished marble, slippery and cold. My foot slipped on the 3rd step from the top. I fell backwards, tumbling down the entire staircase. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. I had broken my hip. The surgery took 4 hours. The doctors replaced my hip joint with a metal implant and told me I would need months of physical therapy. When I woke up in the recovery room, Derek was there. Linda was not. Derek held my hand and said everything would be okay. But when the doctor mentioned that I would need home care and regular therapy sessions, I saw something change in Derek's face. It was just for a moment, but I caught it. Concern, yes, but also something else. Calculation. The recovery was slow and painful. My right hand, which had been injured in the fall, never fully healed. The doctors said there was nerve damage. My fingers trembled constantly, making it difficult to grip anything firmly. The hands that had built furniture for 40 years, that had carved a ring box for my wife, that had taught my son to hold a hammer, those hands now shook like leaves in the wind. Linda made her displeasure known in subtle ways at first, sighing when she saw me struggling to walk, leaving my pain medication in places I could not reach, forgetting to schedule my physical therapy appointments. One evening, I heard her talking to Derek in the kitchen. "This was not part of the plan," she said. "He was supposed to be low maintenance. Now he needs a nurse." I waited for Derek to defend me, to remind her that I was his father, that I had sacrificed everything for him. But he said nothing, just like he always did. The months that followed were the darkest of my life. Every day brought new humiliations, small cruelties that chipped away at whatever dignity I had left. Linda stopped using my name altogether. I became him or your father or simply the old man. She would talk about me in the third person even when I was sitting right there. "Does he need anything from the store?" she would ask Derek. "Is he going to be in the living room all day?" When guests came over, and there were many guests because Linda loved to host dinner parties, I was instructed to stay in my room. "It is just easier," she explained. "You do not know any of these people anyway." On the rare occasions when I was allowed to join, I was seated at the far end of the table away from the conversation. Linda would introduce me with a dismissive wave of her hand. "This is Derek's father. He had an accident and lives with us now." As if I were a piece of furniture, an inconvenient addition to the household. My grandchildren Emma and Jack were being raised to see me as a burden. I noticed it in small ways at first. They stopped coming to my room to say goodnight. They no longer asked me to read them stories. When I tried to engage them at breakfast, Linda would interrupt. "Grandpa needs his rest. Do not bother him." The message was clear even to children that young. Stay away from the old man. He is not part of this family. Derek changed too, or maybe I finally started seeing who he had become. He was never home. "Work," he said. "Always work." And when he was home, he avoided me. If I entered a room, he would suddenly remember something he needed to do upstairs. If I tried to start a conversation, he would give me one-word answers before finding an excuse to leave. This was the same boy who used to sit in my workshop for hours, watching me work, asking me questions about everything. Now he could not even look me in the eye. I tried to talk to him once, really talk to him. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of the rare times when he was home and Linda was out. I found him in his study, staring at his computer screen. "Son," I said, "I feel like I am in the way here, like I am a burden to you and Linda." Derek looked up, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or shame. But then it was gone, replaced by the same neutral expression he always wore. "Dad, Linda is just stressed," he said. "She is not used to living with elderly people. Give her time. She will come around." He turned back to his computer, and I knew the conversation was over. He had chosen his side, and it was not mine. The worst day came 3 weeks before the breakfast incident. I kept a wooden box in my room, a box I had made myself 30 years ago. Inside were my most precious possessions. My wedding photo with Margaret. Her engagement ring, the one she had worn for 40 years until her fingers became too thin to hold it. A lock of her hair from our first anniversary. Letters she had written me over the years. That box was all I had left of her. One afternoon, I went to my room and the box was gone. I searched everywhere, my heart pounding, my hands shaking worse than usual. Finally, I found it in the storage area behind the house, thrown carelessly among old paint cans and broken furniture. It had rained the night before and the roof leaked. The box was soaked. The letters were ruined. The wedding photo, the one my mother had taken with her old camera, was warped and faded beyond recognition. I sat on the cold concrete floor and cried. I had not cried since Margaret's funeral, but now I could not stop. I cried for my wife. I cried for my son. I cried for the man I used to be, the man who built things with his hands and believed that hard work and love could conquer anything. That man was gone. In his place was just a broken old fool who had trusted the wrong people. When I asked Linda about the box, she shrugged. I was cleaning out your room. It looked like junk, so I put it in storage. How was I supposed to know it was important? There was no apology in her voice. No remorse. Just annoyance that I had dared to question her. I turned to Derek. That box had your mother's things in it. Her ring, her letters, our wedding photo. Derek's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might finally say something. Finally stand up for me, or at least for the memory of his mother. But all he said was, "Dad, it was an accident. Let it go." And then he walked away. That night, I lay in my damp little room and stared at the ceiling. I thought about Margaret, about what she would say if she could see me now. I thought about all the years I had worked, all the sacrifices I had made, all the love I had poured into raising a son who could not even defend his father against his wife. I thought about ending it all, just walking out into the night and never coming back. But something stopped me. Maybe it was Margaret's voice in my head. Maybe it was my own stubborn pride. Or maybe it was just the knowledge that I still had something to prove. The morning of the breakfast incident started like any other. I woke up before dawn, as I always do. Old habits from 40 years of early mornings at the workshop. I lay in bed listening to the house creak and settle, waiting for the sounds of life to begin upstairs. Around 7, I heard footsteps, doors opening and closing, the muffled voices of Emma and Jack getting ready for school. By the time I made my way to the kitchen, the family was already seated at the breakfast table. It was a Saturday, so the children were home. Linda had announced the night before that she was hosting a birthday party for Emma that afternoon. 50 guests, catered food, a bouncy castle in the backyard. She had been planning it for weeks, obsessing over every detail. This morning she was particularly tense, barking orders at the household staff, checking her phone every 30 seconds. I took my usual seat at the corner of the table, the spot farthest from where Linda sat. Derek was reading something on his tablet, not looking up. The children were eating their pancakes in silence, already trained to stay quiet when their mother was in a mood. I reached for the milk pitcher to pour some into my coffee. My hand betrayed me, as it often did now. The tremor that had become my constant companion chose that moment to intensify. My fingers slipped on the handle. The pitcher tipped. Milk splashed across the white tablecloth that Linda had just purchased for the party. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda stared at the spreading white stain, her face contorting with rage. "Are you kidding me?" she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I just bought that tablecloth. It cost $200. $200, and you ruined it." I started to apologize, but she cut me off. "No, I am done. I am done with this." She stood up, throwing her napkin on the table. "Every single day it is something with you. You cannot walk without bumping into things. You cannot eat without making a mess. You cannot do anything without being a burden to everyone around you." Emma and Jack sat frozen, their eyes wide. Derek still had not looked up from his tablet, though I could see his jaw clenching. "You are no different from a cripple," Linda said, spitting out the words like venom. "Actually, a cripple would at least have the decency to stay out of the way. But you just sit there taking up space, reminding us every day that we are stuck with you." I looked at Derek. My son, the boy I had raised, the man I had sacrificed everything for. I waited for him to say something, to tell his wife that she had crossed a line, to defend his father even in the smallest way. Derek put down his tablet. He picked up his fork, and he continued eating his breakfast. He did not look at me. He did not say a word. He just sat there chewing his food as if nothing had happened, as if I did not exist, as if his wife had not just called his father a cripple to his face. Something broke inside me at that moment. Not my heart that had been broken for months. This was something deeper. The last thread of hope I had been clinging to, the belief that somewhere inside Derek was still the son I had raised, it snapped. I stood up slowly, my hip aching, my hands trembling. No one said anything as I walked out of the kitchen. No one called after me. No one apologized. I went to my room and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the ruined photo of Margaret that I had tried to salvage from the water damage. Her face was barely visible now, just a blur of colors and shapes. But I could still see her smile. I could still hear her voice. Eugene, she had said to me on her last day when the cancer had taken almost everything but had not touched her spirit. Promise me something. Promise me you will never let anyone take away your dignity. You are the strongest man I know. Do not ever forget that. I had forgotten. Somewhere along the way, in my grief and my loneliness and my desperate desire to be close to my son, I had forgotten who I was. I had let myself become exactly what Linda saw, a burden, an inconvenience, something to be tolerated and resented. That night I did not sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling thinking about my life, about the business I had built from nothing, about the furniture I had crafted with my own hands, pieces that were still in homes and restaurants and hotels all over the region, about the son I had raised who had somewhere along the way become a stranger. And I thought about what I was going to do next. Not revenge. That was not who I was. Margaret had not raised a bitter man, and I was not going to become one now. But I was going to take back my dignity. I was going to show my son and his wife and myself that I was not done yet. Around 3 a.m, I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Walter Thompson, my oldest friend and former business partner. We had not spoken in over a year, not since Margaret's funeral. But some friendships do not need constant maintenance. Some friendships just are. I typed out a text message. Walter, I need your help. It is time for me to remember who I am. I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I lay back and waited for the dawn. Walter called me first thing in the morning. Eugene, what is going on? Are you okay? I could hear the concern in his voice. Walter and I had been friends for over 30 years. He knew me better than almost anyone except Margaret. I need to get out of here, I said. But I need a plan first. Can we talk? 2 hours later, Walter pulled up in front of the house in his old pickup truck, the same one he had been driving since 1995. Linda was in the backyard supervising the party setup and did not notice. Derek was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in his study. I walked out the front door, got in the truck, and we drove away. We went to a diner 20 minutes outside the city, a place where no one would recognize us. Over coffee and eggs, I told Walter everything. The room by the storage area. The French conversations designed to exclude me. The ruined box with Margaret's things. And finally, the breakfast incident. Walter listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Eugene, do you remember the patent? I frowned. What patent? The joinery technique you developed back in '92. The interlocking system that eliminated the need for visible screws or nails. You patented it. Remember, I helped you file the paperwork. I had forgotten about that completely. It seemed like another lifetime. That was 30 years ago. It cannot still be valid. Walter smiled. Patents last 20 years. But here is the thing. When that patent expired, you did not let the technique become public domain. You filed for a continuation, and then you licensed it to a furniture manufacturing company. A big one. I stared at him. What are you talking about? Walter pulled out his phone and showed me an email. I started looking into this after the funeral, I knew you and Margaret had some assets that were not fully accounted for. Eugene, that licensing agreement has been generating royalties for years. The checks were going to a trust account that your old accountant set up. He passed away a few years ago, so the notifications stopped coming to you. But the money kept accumulating. How much? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Walter looked me in the eye. Over $2 million. I could not breathe. $2 million sitting in an account I did not know existed. For years I had been living in a converted storage room, being treated like garbage, believing I had nothing. And all along I was a millionaire. There is more, Walter said. That land you sold 3 years ago, the lot next to your old workshop. There is a new highway being built, and the developers need that land. The current owner has agreed to sell, but you retained mineral rights in the original sale agreement. You are entitled to a percentage of any development profits. My lawyer says it could be another $500,000. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. All these years I had measured my worth by what I could do with my hands. Now those hands trembled, and I had believed I was worthless. But my worth was never just in my hands. It was in my mind, my creativity, my ability to solve problems and create value. The patent, the business deals, the careful legal work that Margaret and I had done together decades ago. It was all still there, still working for me, even when I had forgotten about it. What do you want to do? Walter asked. I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, I want to leave. But I want to do it right. I want Derek to understand what he has lost. Not the money. The money does not matter. I want him to understand that he lost his father. Walter nodded. Then let us make a plan. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked in secret. Walter helped me find a small apartment in a coastal town in Maine, the kind of place Margaret and I had always talked about retiring to. It had a view of the ocean and a small workshop space in the garage. Perfect for a man who still wanted to work with his hands, even if those hands trembled. I contacted my niece Lisa, my late sister's daughter. She was a nurse living in Maine, just 30 minutes from the apartment I had found. We had always been close, and when I told her what was happening, she was furious on my behalf. Uncle Eugene, you should have called me months ago. I would have come and gotten you myself. I also wrote a letter. It took me 5 drafts to get it right. I wrote about my life, about the sacrifices I had made, about the love I had for my son. I wrote about Margaret, about her dreams for Derek, about how proud she would have been of the lawyer he became, but how heartbroken she would have been to see the man he had turned into. I wrote about the breakfast incident, about the silence that had hurt more than the words. And I wrote about my decision to leave. Not out of hatred or revenge, but out of self-respect. I explained that I still loved Derek, that I would always love him, but that I could not stay in a house where I was treated as less than human. I told him that when he was ready to be the man his mother believed he could be, my door would be open. The morning I left, I came downstairs one last time. The family was having breakfast as usual. Linda looked up with annoyance. Derek barely glanced at me. The children kept their eyes on their plates. Going somewhere? Linda asked with a mocking smile. You can barely walk to the mailbox. I stood straight, ignoring the pain in my hip. I am leaving. Today. Permanently. Derek finally looked up. Dad, what are you talking about? Where will you go? You cannot take care of yourself. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and I saw a stranger. I built a business from nothing with these hands, I said, holding them up so he could see the tremors. These hands that you let her call crippled. I put you through law school with the money these hands earned. I gave you everything I had, and you could not say one word to defend me. Linda started to speak. Who is going to pay for your medical bills? You think you can just... I own patents worth more than this house, I said, cutting her off. I never needed your money. I only needed my son. The look on their faces was almost worth everything I had endured. Almost. Linda's jaw dropped. Derek went pale. Even the children seemed to sense that something significant was happening. Walter was waiting outside. He had already loaded my bags into his truck. I placed the letter on the breakfast table where Derek would find it. Then I walked out the front door without looking back. For the first few weeks in Maine, I did not answer Derek's calls. I needed time to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The apartment was small, but comfortable. Lisa helped me set up the kitchen and made sure I had everything I needed. She came by every few days to check on me sometimes, bringing her 8-year-old daughter Sophie, who reminded me so much of Emma at that age. I started physical therapy again, this time with a therapist who actually cared about my progress. I walked on the beach every morning, slowly at first, then with more confidence. The sea air seemed to clear something in my lungs, something that had been congested with grief and resentment for too long. And I started working again. Not big projects, just small things. A neighbor needed a rocking chair fixed. The local library wanted custom bookshelves. A young couple asked if I could make a cradle for their first baby. My hands still trembled, but I learned to work around it. I built jigs and guides that compensated for the shaking. I took my time. I remembered why I had fallen in love with woodworking in the first place. 2 weeks after I left, Derek called again. This time I answered. His voice was raw. He had been crying. "Dad, I read your letter. Every night I read it. I cannot believe what I let happen. I cannot believe I just sat there and—" He could not finish the sentence. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to tell him it was okay. But it was not okay. And pretending otherwise would not help either of us. "Son," I said, "I do not hate you. I want you to understand that. I could never hate you. But I cannot come back. Not because of Linda, because of you, because you stayed silent. You let her say those things and you did nothing. Aunts is a choice, Derek. And you chose wrong." I heard him crying on the other end of the line. I know I did. I was a coward. I was so afraid of upsetting her, of disrupting the life we had built, that I forgot what mattered. I forgot who raised me. I forgot everything you and Mom taught me. "What are you going to do about it?" I asked. There was a long pause. "I do not know yet. But I am going to figure it out. I promise you, Dad, I am going to be better. When you are ready to be the man your mother believed you could be," I said, "my door will be open." 3 months later, Derek called again. This time his voice was different, stronger. "Dad, Linda and I are separating. I found out she has been having an affair with one of her father's business partners. It has been going on for years." I was not surprised. "Not really." "I am sorry, son." "Do not be. It is the wake-up call I needed. I have been living in a fantasy, pretending that money and status were enough. I have been so blind." He paused. "I want to come see you. I want to bring Emma and Jack. I want them to know their grandfather. The real him, not the broken man in the storage room." "I would like that," I said, and I meant it. The first visit was awkward. Derek did not know how to act around me, and the children were shy after so many months of being told to stay away. But we took it slow. I showed them the workshop. I let Jack hold a hammer while I guided his small hands. Emma asked if I could teach her to make a wooden box like the one Grandma had. I looked at her, this little girl who was growing up too fast in a house full of secrets and resentment, and I saw hope. "I would love to teach you," I said. But it takes time. You have to be patient. I can be patient, she said solemnly. Over the next year, Derek visited every month. He filed for divorce and fought for joint custody of the children. It was ugly and expensive and emotionally draining, but he did not back down. I'm not going to let her turn them into people like her, he told me. I'm going to teach them what really matters. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in October. Derek called me that night. It is done, he said. I am free. No, I corrected him. Now the real work begins. He came to Maine that weekend, this time alone. We sat in my workshop surrounded by the smell of fresh wood and varnish, and we talked for hours. Not about the past, but about the future. About the kind of man he wanted to be. About the kind of father he wanted to be. At one point he picked up a chisel and turned it over in his hands. I remember when you taught me to use one of these, he said. I must have been 8 or 9. I was so scared of cutting myself. You did cut yourself, I reminded him. 3 times. He laughed a real laugh, the first one I had heard from him in years. And you just bandaged me up and told me to try again. That is how you learn, I said. You make mistakes. You get hurt. And you try again. Derek looked at me, and for the first time in a long time I saw my son. Not the stranger he had become, but the boy I had raised. I'm going to try again, Dad. I promise. I believed him. It has been almost 2 years since I left that house in Philadelphia. I still live in my little apartment by the sea. Lisa visits regularly, and Sophie has become quite the woodworker. She made a jewelry box for her mother last Christmas all by herself with only a little help from her great-uncle. Derek and the children come up every month, sometimes more often, now that he has arranged his work schedule differently. He took a pay cut to have more time with Emma and Jack, but he says it is worth it. He is teaching them things I taught him about hard work and integrity and the value of creating something with your own hands. Emma finished her wooden box last month. She worked on it for almost a year, sanding it, smooth carving a simple flower pattern on the lid, applying coat after coat of varnish until it gleamed. When she presented it to me, I opened it to find a letter inside. Dear Grandpa, it said, "Thank you for teaching me that beautiful things take time. I love you." My hands still tremble. They probably always will, but they can still do beautiful things. They can still create. They can still teach. I think about Margaret every day. I talk to her sometimes when I am sitting on my porch watching the sunset over the ocean. I tell her about Derek, about how he is becoming the man she always believed he could be. I tell her about the grandchildren, about Emma's patience and Jack's curiosity. I tell her that I kept my promise. I never let anyone take away my dignity. Looking back, I realized that the morning Linda called me a cripple was both the worst and best moment of my life. It was the worst because it showed me exactly what my family had become. But it was the best because it forced me to wake up, to remember who I was, to reclaim the life I had let others define for me. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones you love the most. And the hardest thing is not walking away. The hardest thing is knowing when to walk away. I learned that lesson late in life, but I learned it. And I am grateful for every day I have left to live it. If you are watching this and you feel invisible in your own home, I want you to know something. You are not alone. Your worth is not measured by what others say about you or how they treat you. Your worth is measured by the life you have lived, the love you have given, and the courage you have to start again. It is never too late to remember who you are. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone make you feel worthless in your own home? Have you ever had to walk away from people you loved to save yourself? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know others will find strength in your words. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Sometimes the stories we share become the lifelines that pull others out of the darkness. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And remember, no matter how much your hands tremble, they still have the power to build something beautiful. God bless you all.